Okay, good morning everybody. Thank you for coming along to the introduction to your project unit. So MDA 3006 and MDA 3007, essentially the same unit. We just offer it twice so that you get an opportunity to do 2 internships or a project, an internship, or maybe 2 projects. So the unit is the same, it's duplicated, but it's offered twice. So if you're enrolled in MDA 3006 or in MDA 3007, you are going to be doing the same assessment, essentially the same unit. Okay, so I'm going to speak to the MDA 3006 Canvas site, but the MDA 3007 is exactly the same site. So over summer, if you're doing both units, then obviously you're going to have to do 2 projects, or an internship and a project. Okay, so importantly for you guys, this is self-directed learning. So whatever you choose to do, if you do an internship, then basically you source your internship or you apply for an internship, you get offered the internship, you do the work placement, and then you report back on it through the same assessment links that everybody will be doing. So these 5 different pieces of assessment. If you decide to do a project, you develop your own project. So you conceptualize it, you research it, you think about what you want to do, you think about when you want to do it, you develop it, and then you come up with a work timeline of when you will address different things in your project. So essentially with a project, we say that a unit of work at university is about 150 hours. Now, realistically, you're not going to sit down at a desk for 150 hours and do your project. But what you will make those hours up out of is thinking about what you want to do, conceptualizing how you might go about doing it, so what format it will take, and then researching the best approach to that format and how to, particularly as this is an academic unit, how you would make this quite robust in your approach, and then you will plan your project, obviously develop your project, come up with an artifact at the end. So the artifact might be something like a short film, might be a chapter of a book, might be a promotional video, might be a research paper that you intend to try and get published in a journal. But all these different artifacts are the finished product of that 150 hours of thinking about, working on, planning your project. And then at the end of your project, you produce the artifact and you do a reflective essay. So with the internship, on the other hand, you go into a work placement, you work there at least 36 hours supervised work. So 36 hours is a full week's work of going into the office and being supervised in your work. Okay, so working from home, developing some social media strategies for an organisation, that is not an internship because you are not supervised. So the whole idea around an internship is that you go into a work environment, a work placement, and you get guidance and supervision from people that are staff that have worked in that area before. Otherwise, you are doing a project. Does that make sense? Okay, so you do your work placement, that is your artifact. You then provide a journal of work when you actually went into work, what you did, and some example pieces of that work. So that makes your artifact, and then the same as with your project, you do a reflective essay at the end. Does that make sense to people? Yep, good. So what are you required to do between now and when the unit wraps up in mid-February? First of all, you need to come up with what we call a statement of intention. So what you intend to do. So if you intend to do an internship and you're currently applying for internships, then that's what you put in your statement of intention. So your statement of intention is 150 to 300 words. It's just a statement of what you are hoping to do. If you already know what your project is going to be, great. Tell me quickly about your project, what you want to do, when you want to do it. If you're looking for an internship but you haven't secured one, then you explain that you're looking for internships. Maybe you're looking for a media creation internship, or an advertising internship, or a public relations internship. You explain that, you explain the organisations that you've approached. If you've already secured an internship, then you just say, I've secured an internship at this particular location, I'll be working these days. This is the type of work or responsibilities that I will have. So that's your statement of intention. You are not locked into your statement of intention. It's just what you intend to do. Any questions on your statement of intention? No? So that is due 5th of December, right? So we start earlier than the normal summer term because we need those 12 weeks typically for a lot of people to do their projects, or they might be having internships over the summer period. So that is due the 5th of December. Now, if you do put it in late, yes, there is a late penalty. Okay? Then, on the 14th of December, you have to have decided what you're going to do. So if you've got your internship, great. If you haven't got an internship, say you're getting to around the 10th, 11th of December, time to panic. Start thinking, look, it doesn't look like I'm going to secure an internship, so I will then switch to a project. So always have a plan B if you are looking or trying to source an internship. If you've got one, great. But if you're still trying to get one by 10th, 11th of December, we're starting to run out of time. So that is when you would switch to plan B, which would be doing a project. So have in the back of your mind a thought process around, you know, if I don't get an internship, this is the kind of thing I would like to do. In your statement of intention, I will give you feedback. I'll say, yeah, great, looks good, or have you considered this, or really this isn't going to be enough work, you need to expand the scope of what you're going to be doing, or I might say, this is a huge project, you're probably not going to get this done in 12 weeks, why don't you consider doing this aspect of your project? Okay, so I'll give you feedback that will help you do what we call your final brief. So your final brief, there is a template. So it's a Word document that is up under assessment that you fill in. In the final brief, which is due mid-December, 14th of December, in that brief you explain who you are, who your supervisor will be. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me over the summer term. I'll speak more about supervisors in a minute. Right? What your project or internship is, a timeline of when you intend to do that work. If you're doing an internship, state who the company is, who your supervisor is, what their contact details are. Right? So we need that information because we also need to be a support mechanism for you when you are doing an internship. Most internships turn out to be great. There's a very small percentage of internships that don't go so well for our students. And so sometimes they need to pull out of those internships, or they need me to go and speak to their supervisor, right? Or they need to consider changing their work habits so that they work better within that internship. But that's only a very small percentage. So give us the details of who you're working for, who your supervisor is, and there is a sign-off form to say that you have secured that internship, and your internship employer signs that form too. So you include that with your final brief. If you're doing a project, same thing, name, supervisor, what your project is, what you're going to do, scope it out for me. Very simple, probably similar to what you say in your statement of intention if you're not changing your project. And then give me a guideline of the work breakdown that you intend to do over the summer. This work breakdown schedule, sometimes called a WBS, that is a guideline for you as students about when you should work on it. Okay, you're not going to stick to it religiously, I know that. But what I have found with some people doing summer projects, internships, not so much because you're locked in to going to your employer, but with projects, sometimes, you know, the summer gets away from you. So we get close to Christmas, there's some parties, there's maybe work you've got to do, then between Christmas and New Year, that's generally, we have that week off for the internship. Not many people do much work, for the unit, not many people do much work in that period, but you know, you're kind of in that relaxed mode, and then it takes a while to wind back up and get back into your project, and before you know it, it's the end of January. So just be aware that that work breakdown structure and schedule helps you understand this is when I've got to sit down, I've got to sit and work on my project. And if I miss one of those, I've got to make it up. Does that make sense? Because it is very easy for the time to get away from you over summer. So you put your WBS in with your final brief, send that in to me. I will give you some feedback on that. Typically, most people mirror what they put in their statement of intention anyway. They just expand on it and formalise what they're going to do. So usually you don't get much feedback from your statement, your final brief, compared to your statement of intention. So that's due 14th of December. So if you haven't started work on your project by mid-December, you're lagging behind. If you haven't started your internship or secured an internship, I should say, because your internship might be some other time beyond the start of December, mid-December, then you're going to have to start thinking about, okay, I've got to look at a project. Then we have what we call a mid-project review. This is where you just check back in with me. Some people are fine, they swim along quite nicely, they're doing an internship or they're working on their project, they're sticking to their deadlines, everything's going really well, but I still want you just to check back in with me. It's part of that reporting back process where you give me a 150 to 300 word document explaining where you are with your project or your internship, how it's going, whether it's meeting your expectations. So that's a checking in process. But over the course of the summer, every Wednesday I will be available. So if you have questions for me, you go through discussion board. Go through discussion board on the Canvas site. Don't send me an email about your project or your work if it's general questioning. And the reason for that is you might ask a question which is the same question that 20 of the other 36 students doing these units wants to know. And if I have to answer it through emails, I'm just repeating myself 36 times. But if I just answer it on discussion board, then everybody gets the same answer. So if you have a general question about, you know, deadlines, when stuff is due, if I'm doing this, is this okay, that you don't mind sharing with the rest of the group, that goes on discussion board. If you have an issue that is a personal issue or might be a professional issue at your internship, ring me or email me, okay? So I'll be checking this site every Wednesday. So Wednesday is going to be our check-in day. Wednesday's check-in day, I answer all the questions on the discussion board. But if you have some sort of urgency or emergency, you ring me or you send me an email and I will deal with that as quickly as I get that message. Okay, but that's only for emergencies. Make sense? All right. So Wednesday's discussion day, that is catch-up day. If you've got issues that you want to discuss that are generalised, that's when we do it. Don't send me I'll put up on discussion board on Friday a message and then send me an email on Monday and say, you haven't discussed my message on discussion board, because like you, part of this is my holiday too. So Wednesday's my work day. So that's when I come into work and I look at the discussion board. One thing I didn't say about statement of intention, which is very important, which I should have said, is in that statement of intention also you list your objectives. Now your objectives are twofold. One refers to the type of work you're doing and what you hope to achieve with that work. So if you're doing, let's say, a book chapter, and you're doing a writing project, then you would say, I hope to complete, a 15,000 word book chapter in this project unit. But you also include personal learning objectives. So that's the second part of your objectives consideration. So not only what you do in terms of work, but what you hope to achieve in terms of learning. So by writing my book chapter, I hope to understand the genre of crime fiction. So that's my personal objective. So list 2, 3, 4, probably 5 is getting beyond how many objectives you need, but between 2 and 4 objectives, and make sure that 1 or 2 of them are personal objectives about what you want to learn, want to understand by doing this particular project or internship. They are the things that you measure against when you do your final piece of assessment, which is your reflective essay. So in your reflective essay, that is where you address whether you have achieved your objectives. Now you might be doing a project and you might be finding that the project is taking you more down this path than you had intended. So with your mid-project review, you can also change your objectives. So you're not locked into your objectives that you say in your final brief, although you'd like to have a fairly good idea about what you hope to achieve, but you might find that different things are developing in your project and you've come down a different path, or you might be doing an internship and they've got you doing more video media content and you thought you were going to do more social writing, but you're really enjoying this media video content, then you can change your objectives. Make sense? So this is the final opportunity that you have to change your objectives in your mid-review. If you change your objectives, you just put those in your mid-review. And then you report on those in your final essay. So we do our project, we come up with our artefact, or we do a work placement and we do some really good work and we keep some examples of that work if our employee thinks that's okay. Sometimes they like to protect their intellectual property, so you work for them, so you produce work on behalf of them, and they might say, no, we don't want you taking that out of the office. That's something that's private and we're protecting that and we're going to release that in 6 months' time, maybe in a public vein. That's fine. All you need to do then explain what you did and maybe some drafts of the kind of work that you did as example work for your project, for your work placement. So your project is your artefact, you complete that, you tick off when you did the work. Your internship is like your work placement artefact, so you talk about what you did when you did it in your work journal, and if you've got some examples, which most of you will have, that'd be great, you include those. Then you get a final feedback form from your employer. So with your internship, there's another form that's on the Canvas site. I'll show you. You send that off to your employer, or you take that in on your last day and ask them to give you feedback, and you send that back in with your final assessment. So that's one part. So your project or project folio or your work placement. The other part is your reflective essay. So you're doing 2 pieces of assessment at the end. One is you produce your artefact or your work placement. The other one is your reflective essay. That's 1,000 to 1,500 words. Not a lot, about 3 to 4 pages of text. In your reflective essay, you talk about how you did things, what you've learnt from them. Did you achieve what you set out to achieve? So it's not overly taxing. It really is a reflection by yourself on how valuable your project or your work placement was. Now you might go to a work placement and it was a horror show, and they had you filing information and doing really basic content, stuff that you've been doing at university since your first year. That's fine. Mightn't have been great fun, but that's what you explain in your reflective essay, right? So it is really a report on what you hope to do and what you ended up doing and what you learnt from it. And you will learn from that. There'll be things that valuable that you get out of it. There'll be things that you make a note about, and in the future, if you go for an internship, then you will be aware of, these are the kind of responsibilities I don't want to have. I'm really not learning anything from these. So that's what you put in your reflective essay. If you do your project, then you talk about, this is what I intended to do, this is how far I got into my project, this is what I completed, this is the standard it got to. It's a standard above what I thought I would complete, or it's below what I intended to complete, and these are the reasons why. And this is what I have learnt. Now, I get lots of questions at the end about, okay, so, what's our referencing that we reference against in our final reflective essay? You reference against work, knowledge that you have got at university from the units that you've done. So the whole idea about doing a project or internship is that you've learnt this stuff at uni, now you're putting it into practice. So you reflect back on the units that you've done at university. Might be things like reading that you've done at university, might be unit content that you got from lectures, or it might be projects that you did in your tutorials or part of your assessment that directly translate into what you did for your project or what you did for your internship. So in your reflective essay, you reflect back to, when I was doing my PR writing course, PUB 2003, we learned about writing media releases. This was really valuable when I had to do a media release on behalf of this organisation. Does that make sense? I see a few worried looks on people's faces. It's not a big referencing demand, but what we're asking you to do is think back to what you've learnt, and then that helps you to say, well, I did this on my project, but it's something that relates to what I learnt at university, or this is new knowledge. So it actually helps with your reflective essay. So that's what we mean by referencing. If you've read something that you think was valuable, then put it in as a reference too. So any questions on that? No? Good. Hopefully I've explained it fairly simply for you. So going through this again, 5th of December, so in about 10 days' time, your statement of intention, what you intend to do, project or internship. 14th of December is your final brief. There is a template that you fill out. It's a one-page template. You send that in to me. Include in that your objectives. Objectives you hope to do from doing the internship, and objectives from a personal perspective, what you hope to learn or experience. Then mid-January, 16th of January, your mid-project review. So how are you tracking? You just send in to me. It's really a checking in process if you've been out working independently and you haven't been asking questions and things, which is fine. That is fine. But it's just a way to check back in with me and say, yep, everything's going well, internship's going great, I've done this, this and this, I hope to do this, this and this over the next couple of weeks. My objectives, I seem to be achieving my objectives, which is great. So you check in, all those pieces of assessment, they're worth 20%. Then finally, your artefact or your work folio of what you did. That's worth 50%. You send that in at the end, collate it, send it in, and your final piece of assessment is a reflective essay. It's not quite coming up on the text there, but you upload to the same site your reflective essay. 1,000 to 1,500 words about what you did, what you experienced, what you learnt. What was good, maybe what wasn't so good. So that's your assessment. Basically, your assessment guides or tracks you through the particular unit. Otherwise, you're kind of on your own. But you can still ask me questions. You do it through discussion board. If there are things that are urgent or immediate that really concern you, ring me on my mobile. I'll give you my mobile details, and email me. Okay, and I'll get onto that as quickly as I possibly encounter your information. Now, I said that I'm the supervisor, but you can source mentors. So if you're doing writing projects and you know that you want to attempt a piece of writing that is something, a genre or an approach that you're not used to, then you'll find that the writing lecturers, Carolyn, Julia, they're really receptive to mentoring you. So you can ask them questions throughout that 12-week period. Right? If you're doing advertising, then Anne or David might help you out. If you're doing journalism and you've got some tricky questions, then you might ask one of the journalism academics to mentor you, to be a sounding board for you. But anything to do with the unit and assessment and approaches, that comes through me. Okay, so your mentor's just there as a backup. So I'm your supervisor as such. So I will mark your work. I can also go out to them and get some cross-marking for moderation if it's an area that I'm not that familiar with. So rest assured, you will be marked fairly and there will be consistency in the marking. So what such and such does for a writing project and gets marked against to what such and such does for an internship, you will still be marked fairly on an equal basis. So don't worry about that one. Any questions about supervision and mentoring? No? Great. Right, so what are you going to do? Hands up those people in the room. I know there's only a handful of us, but hands up those that already have a project or an internship that they've registered. Great. Those of you that are still thinking about it, have you got an indication? Hands up those that are trying to do an internship. Haven't got one yet. No? Got projects in mind? Have you thought about projects? Yep. Kind of. All right. Well, that's okay. You've still got 10 days. And don't forget, your statement of intention is just what you intend to do. So think about, what would I like to do? How am I going to do it? But have something that's substantial for me by the 5th of December. Because we want to start you on your work the next week when you pass in your final brief. If you've already got something going, don't wait, get stuck into it, right? So you guys got projects or internships? Internship, great. Yeah, great. So no worries. Get stuck in your statement of intention, send that through, do your final brief, send that through to me. Okay? So no worries with the internships. With your projects, don't let it bounce along, like I said, to mid-December, because time will get away from you. Then you'll find it's New Year, then you'll find it takes a while to get back into that working mindset, and before you know it, you're halfway through January. So projects, have something substantial by the 5th of December. If you want to chat to some of your academic staff in your discipline, that's fine. Go ahead, ask them. If you are really, really stuck, then at the moment I've got some limited options available for you, but under modules, if we go to internship projects, I have 3 up here at the moment. This one here is social media projects. So I have a relationship with a national social media marketing company that works on behalf of small business. They will give you 4 businesses to manage their social media over that 12-week period. So you manage the content, you provide advice, because a lot of these small business, a lot of the people that work in those small businesses, they're very busy, or they're actually quite illiterate when it comes to technology. So they need help. They need help with the very basic, simple things around promoting their business through social media. So they will ask you for help. You produce material, you send it back to them, say, this is what I advise you to put up, or this is what I would suggest you would include as visuals. They give it the tick and you put it up, or they put it up themselves. You don't take custody of it. It's not your responsibility. You're there on advice, but they can help you. Social club promotional videos. The social club, which is the staff club here, which is the social arm of all the staff, they're looking for somebody to produce 3 or 4 promotional videos. 1-minute videos each. So the content, they provide the visuals, you format it into something that's presentable. Eltham Library writing event. There is a writing event at the end of March at the Eltham Library. It's really about events management, but if you're a writing student, then it would be very interesting for you to do that. As others come in, I will load them up. It's about this time of year I get people writing to me about particular internships that they might have available, or projects that they might have. Probably won't be a lot though. You can also visit the Media and Communication Facebook site. A lot of academics just directly load up ideas and projects there, and I have sent a number of them through the wire over the last 2 months. So if you want to go back through the wire, which is that Media and Communication notice board, go back through there and have a look at some of those internships. But I will say that a lot of those internships have already been snapped up. So sorry I haven't got a lot of content there for you, but really it is also one of the kind of intentions and outcomes of the unit is getting you to self-source your information in terms of what do you want to do for a project, or going and finding your own internship. Knock on doors, send your CV, ring up companies, say, I'm doing an internship, I'm covered for insurance because I'm doing it as part of a unit. Is there any work you would like me to do at your organisation? Right, any questions about sourcing projects or internships? No. Have a think for a minute. Are there any pressing questions that you have that I can answer for you on the spot now? I'll give you a minute to think about that. And if you come up with thoughts after this particular quick introduction, then put those on discussion boards so that everybody can share in the answers. Okay, quick question.
I just have one quick question regarding the mid-project review. The due date is when my internship starts. I'm doing the summer one in London.
Yep. So what you would say is that I'm currently just beginning my internship. Will you be there?
I think it starts on like the 7th, so I'll only have been there for
That's
a
fine.
week.
Just say I've been there for a week. This is what I've done. This is what I hope to do for the rest of it. Yeah. Okay.
So I have a couple of questions. So my internship already started and it's finished on the 15th of January, which is a bit earlier than the
15th of
January.
January. Yep. No worries. You just do it. You just do it in a reflective basis. So your mid-review is still due at that time. But you say, I'll finish my project, this is what I've done, I'm going to do a full report in the final assessment.
Okay, and I have another question, but it's regarding my enrollment with this unit.
Your
enrollment?
Talk to me later about that, okay, unless it's a general thing.
Yeah.
So I have a project idea in mind, but I was looking at the example statements of intentions.
Yep.
And one person wrote something about going to Trinity Grammar College. What would would that have been an approved internship gone to a school?
Depends what they were doing.
And so it's not, she said because she was interested in teaching.
Right. She might have done a report on visiting the school and asking the school questions about it. I'm not familiar with that particular example.
So going to a school
Is that what you're thinking about doing?
Well, because my forte is mainly English, I'm doing this as a part of my arts course.
Right.
Yeah.
Won't be many schools open between mid-December and
so it's
Feb.
36 hours though.
36-hour internship?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it could be possible.
could be possible,
But
right?
like, is that something that can be approved or not?
Well, if it's supervised 36 hours of work in your chosen discipline for the unit, that's fine.
Oh, so it is okay to teach and show lesson plans and artifacts of what?
Maybe you'll need to talk with me after this further and explain what you're thinking of. Any other general questions? No, right? So, final thing. Assessments are due on their due dates. If you miss those due dates, yes, there is a penalty for late submission. Your project should be decided by the 5th or 15th of December. You should have started work on it by the 15th of December. If you haven't got an internship by the 10th or 11th of December, it's time to switch to a project. If you have and everything else is sorted, that's fine. Mid-project review, mid-January, it's just an update, it's a checking in. Your final folio or work journal, artefact, folio of work, due, what date was that again? Can't remember what date exactly it was. 15th of January, February. 15th of February, your final reflective essay, due the 15th of February. Right? After that, it's late. If you need to negotiate a deadline with me because for example, your internship starts later, then we can look at flexibility around that, or maybe you need to do your final report and your final essay based on what you've done to that stage. Because we can't drag this out into the next semester, because a new project unit starts at the end of February. So deadlines are something that you need to stick with. Wednesday is work day. That's check-in day for me. I look at the discussion board, I answer your questions on the Wednesday. If you've got a question on the Friday, put it up, I will answer it on the Wednesday. If you have something that is urgent or an emergency, you contact me through email or my mobile straight away. Right? And I'll deal with it as quickly as I can get to it. Final thing I'll say about that too is, if you are in a situation in your internship that makes you feel very uncomfortable, just pull out. Right? Don't feel that your academic application to that internship should be something that compromises if you're feeling very uncomfortable about that situation. You just pull out of it, get onto me straight away. Okay? But that's never happened. Never happened in the 11 years I've been at university. But there have been times where the relationship has been strained between the employer and you doing the internship. Most of the time we work those out. So, self-directed, meet your deadlines, contact me, discussion on Wednesdays, all seems pretty simple, yeah? Any final questions? All right, thank you. Good luck. We'll hear from you maybe through discussion board or maybe just on those check-in periods for your assessment.